right, welcome everyone. We'll get started with tonight's delegates. Our first delegate is Tara Baldwin. Is Miss Baldwin here? Okay. Vice Chair Smith, if you want to take it from here.
So it looks like we have four delegates that are going to present, and so I'll just read this one time. So if you're on this list to speak tonight, we'll just read it once, and we'll have to do it 4 times. Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact the central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since the superintendent is responsible for individual employees. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. Clock on the wall over here, and we'll give you a 1-minute warning. So, Tara Baldwin. Miss Tara Baldwin, are you here? Not here? Okay. How about Kathy Ryan? Are you here, Miss Ryan?
Tell me when to start. Go ahead and start. Okay. Thank you for this opportunity to come speak to you about the proposed closing of Alpine Crest. I live in Red Bank and I have 2 connections to the school. My grandsons go to school there, and I'm also one of the master gardeners who help maintain the grounds and the gardens. I have been at the school about 3 years now and have gotten to know the dedicated and awesome staff and supports the teachers and support staff at the school. When this proposal was first announced 4 weeks ago, our PTA president immediately started an online petition. I was the person who went out in the community with my Alpine shirt on, of course, and the response from the Red Bank community was very tremendous. I went to over 20 businesses to see if I could post our flyer, always wearing my shirt. There are a few businesses these are a few of the businesses that said yes. Red Bank Animal Hospital and Hardee's, both times when I went into both of those businesses, there were former students that worked there that said they loved Alpine. When I went into Sherwin-Williams, Eric, the manager, had already donated Stain to our school, so I knew he would say yes. When I went to Red Bank United Methodist Church preschool, Lindsay, the director there, said she had teacher friends at Alpine, and of course she would pass this on to all of her families. And Denise at America's Garden there is also one of her supporters. Mr. Connor set up a meeting for the Red Bank community to discuss this, and there were approximately 100 people there from the area. We had about 15 people speak, teachers, parents, grandparents, community members. I'll mention just a few of these. There was one gentleman who had moved here from Nashville. His daughter was in school, and he wanted to move to a community school with a high rating. One of our students who had been at another Hamilton County school for several years had moved to Alpine, and she got up with the help of her mom and talked about how much she loved Alpine. Doug, the parent of a preschooler who would be starting there next year, got up and spoke about the drive time and the gas money it would take to drive from Red Bank to Hickson. And like I said, there were many other people that I could go on, but I do only have 5 minutes. Yes, Alpine is an older school, but it's not in disrepair. I spoke to our principal, Ms. Jackson, last week, and she told me $500,000 had been spent on the school in the past year. New fire doors, new emergency windows in the classrooms, new security cameras, a new 50,000 state-of-the-art e-lab donated by Volkswagen, outside a new fence around the perimeter of the school, new playground equipment, and our new forest kindergarten class, which includes a shelter, benches, picnic tables, and fire pit. We have 17 acres of outdoor space that can't be replicated. This includes 5 outdoor areas with seating for nature observation and instruction. We have a certified monarch butterfly garden, which last week our kindergarten, forest kindergarten teacher got 4 monarchs off of it, put them in a netted area so the kids can watch it. I've seen the chrysalis, so pretty cool. We have well-maintained and marked hiking trails behind the forest kindergarten class. We have partnered with the Tri-State Bluebird Society, and we have 6 bluebird houses. We had 34 fledglings this past year. And we are going to put cameras in those, so next year the students will be able to watch it. Each of the classroom has a 60 to 70-inch flat screen TV to view this nature experience. The Master Gardeners, of which I am one, have been at Alpine since 2014, and we are on the garden tour next summer, so I hope we're there. We maintain all the areas which I just mentioned, along with 12 raised beds for veggies and native plants. And whenever we have a new project, Randy goes over with the principal to get her approval. The past year, we planted native trees, shrubs, flowering plants, including our state tree, the tulip poplar. One of our MGs, Don, has identified 32 species of trees, and this past Saturday we had 35 volunteers come out and clear around these trees, so we are progressing with our arboretum. Our new E-Lab is going to be able to make the signs for our trees, so that's another great collaboration between the Master Gardeners and the school. I did get to see the E-Lab this week. I'd love to tell you about it, but I don't have enough time. When I was in the process of spreading the word about the proposal to close the school, I walked the car line one day when I was picking up my grandsons. I talked to many parents and grandparents. There are definitely grandparents there who are older than me, and I thought about the drive from Red Bank to the new proposed school at DuPont. I now have a 3-minute drive, 3 stop signs to get to the school. Driving to DuPont, I would be leaving Red Bank city limits, going through 2 school zones, 5 traffic lights, including the already busy intersection at Ashland Terrace, Hickson Pike, and Access Road. I can't imagine the traffic with several more hundred students. Some of the more elderly grandparents might have difficulty making that drive. And then I think about the day that they close school early because of snow. Just think of the chaos of everybody trying to get to the school to pick up their kids. I think it would be mayhem. Anyway, last but most important is the effect it has on the students. I can't emphasize enough the wonderful learning environment at Alpine. And out of the mouths of babes this week, when I picked up my grandsons, asked them how their day was, they both said good, and then the older one said, "It's always a good day at school, Gran." That's it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I'm just going to make one quick comment. Ms. Kathy did share these pictures that she has with me. I unfortunately got them yesterday afternoon after, and so I'm going to distribute them to the board so you guys can see them.
Laura, Eleanor, are you here, Miss Eleanor?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Laura Eleanor. I'm the PTA president at Alpine Crest Elementary. I'm here today to present the petition to keep Alpine Crest open and to expand on the points stated within. We have over 2,600 signatures and 78 comments. I'd like to take the time to read one of the comments. I signed this petition as a parent in this school district whose children were affected negatively when another mega school was made. The scale of these large schools can be intimidating to young children and do not promote a feeling of community. Jennifer French, kindergarten teacher and parent at Alpine. I also have 2 studies here for the board to read. Maybe you've already read them, maybe some of you haven't. They both asserted that the optimal size of an elementary school is between 300 to 400 students and that they should not go over 500 students. The research finds that small schools produce equal or superior achievement for students in general, but the effects of small schools on the achievement of ethnic minority students and students of low socioeconomic status are the most positive of all. I'd like to point out that Alpine Crest has a 44% minority enrollment. Also, the higher rates of parent involvement in smaller schools are frequently cited as a major positive influence on student achievement and attitudes. Parents are more likely to know the principal and teachers, be informed about their children's progress, participate more fully in school activities, and influence decision-making. This can occur partly because the school is smaller, but also because it's likely to be physically and psychologically close to the students' homes. And this brings me to my PTA board. So our PTA does fundraisers for the school, and obviously we use that money to do good things for the school. There at the bottom, we have teacher and staff appreciation. We do something every day of the week for Teacher Appreciation Week. We provide staff lunches at different times throughout the school year. We have showcase nights. We have our fall festival coming up in October. We do a breakfast event in November. You can come have muffins, juice, and coffee provide a grant for each grade level. Typically, that grant is used for field trips so that the field trip is little or no cost to the student. We also supplement the school's budget wherever needed. Just this week, we purchased some much-needed tools for our custodians, and we purchased 2 picnic tables for our back playground so that the teachers have somewhere to sit. I'd like to note that all the parents on our board work full-time. I know for a fact that the things we do would not be possible in a school 3 or 4 times the size. I had the pleasure of speaking with Dana Price this week. She's the president of the Tennessee PTA. She lives in the Chattanooga area and is familiar with the merging of schools that has already happened here. She stated, "Parents are disengaged, kids are lost, some kids succeed, others fall through the cracks." We know that the real beating heart of a school is the people, the staff, the parents, and the network they create. In a mega school, the related arts teachers, the principal, the SSO, they're not going to know 800 to 1,000 kids by name. They're not going to be able to associate parents' faces with their child. This brings up safety and security concerns. Let's talk about the layout of Alpine. We have 17 acres. We have room to remodel, rebuild, expand, whatever it is that needs to be done. There's a road that goes all the way around the back of the school we don't necessarily need. We could use that space for rebuilding. We have a large unused grassy area above one of our playgrounds. The school is U-shaped. We could close in that U, completely enclosing our courtyard to add classrooms. Lastly, I would like to note, people are buying houses in Red Bank because of the great school ratings. I know several people, including my husband and I, we bought our first home there 12 years ago. We didn't have kids yet, but knew we wanted them. We chose that area because of the excellent rating of the elementary school. To sum up, if you take the school out of the community, you will take the community out of the school. Please keep our Red Bank school in the heart of Red Bank, where it can remain accessible for future generations. Thank you.
I believe, did Miss Baldwin, did you come in?
I did.
Okay, would you like to come up?
I would. I do want to note, I think we're having an issue with our timer. Okay, so Sherry will notify you whenever you have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. I shouldn't take that long. My name is Tara Baldwin. I'm a little disappointed to be back here again. The last time I was here was in May of last year, and I came to discuss my daughter receiving a 504 plan. But while I was here, I listened to some very impassioned parents discuss a Mother's Day program that was shut down at Alpine Crest, based upon the fact that the material may be offensive to families' personal and religious beliefs. In August of this year, my daughter came home with this book that had been given to her and every single student at her school. My daughter is 7. Now, this Bible says Holy Bible for Kids. When I opened it, I was disturbed to find that it is not a Holy Bible for kids. I opened up to Leviticus, which anybody who has studied the Bible knows that that is the section that tells you what you get stoned for, your sexual transgressions. In it, I found that it described having sex with family members, having sex with children, and all of these things can cause you to get stoned. I moved on to Hosea, I moved on to Exodus, I moved on to I moved on to Genesis. Every single passage that I, as a Christian, know to be a little bit more terse or difficult for the younger minds to understand was in this book. The tabs I have here was just 10 minutes of me going through based upon the 40 some odd years that I have read the Bible. My complaint is not that religious-based organizations are providing things to the children in the school. There is no question that their donations, such as the one that came with this Bible, a backpack filled with school supplies, are a blessing to some parents who simply cannot afford to make it all happen at the beginning of the school year. However, as I reminded this board last year, I will remind you again. This district is a federally funded endeavor. Therefore, you are bound by the constitutional civil and social rights of every parent that has a child in this district. I guarantee you that there are other children in this district who are not Christian, who are Buddhist, who are Jewish, who possibly study at the Church of the Spaghetti Monster. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. The fact of the matter is dissemination of religious materials within the school, whether it's the 10 Commandments in the classroom or a Holy Bible dressed up in something desirable for children like school supplies and a cool backpack, is unacceptable. While we may still cling to our rights in this nation by a mere thread, they are still intact. I do not have a problem with religious-based organizations leaving books at the office, providing supplies to kids, opening up their property so that we can have programs there. I do have a problem with them handing out religious material that may not be part of their family's belief system to children to take home. It is offensive and it is unconstitutional. And I will say this as a Christian. I was raised in the faith. I raised my children in the faith. I was fortunate enough that 3 of my children were able to go to Christian-based schools. I expected them to come home with Bibles from those schools. I paid for them to go to school with like-minded individuals and get that text as part of their education. It's not okay for my 7-year-old to be given a book when she has an hour and a half prior to coming home to me while she's in aftercare that discusses things like ripping open pregnant women's bellies and dashing their children, that discusses or tells my daughter that if I spare the rod, I spoil the child. If I don't love her, I won't beat her when she is wrong. That is not the message I choose to send to my daughter. My daughter has a Bible, and that Bible has wonderful stories about God's love. It is a Bible that I do not send to school with her because they may not all share the same God. And this is not a Bible I would give my daughter. I understand from speaking with Dr. Robertson today that there are policies in place and that this policy was ignored. And that is unacceptable. That policy should be held tight and fast for every student here to ensure that equality is applied across the board. Thank you.
Ms. Jeanette?
Good evening, everyone. I won't take a lot of your time because you all want to go home. I just wanted to come before you. I haven't been able to see you. I've been out of town in your meetings the last few months, and I want to thank you, one, for passing and approving the Memorandum of Understanding. Teachers are very excited about that, and it was done very collaboratively, and we are excited about that as well. And I will tell you, so far, so good. That's a good thing. Fewer calls, that means everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. I wanted to also come before you as you are looking at insurance. That is something we have also talked about, and we realized, the PECA team realized that 10 years is a long time to go without having any increases, and good times come to an end because reality hits. You have to look at the bottom line. We know that. And so we had the district come and speak to our board, our building representatives this week so that they could hear and ask questions. And then they can go and bring that information back to their buildings and answer any questions before they be prepared for when they have their community meetings so that they can know what to ask. We're very excited that they had the opportunity to do that because I think it will make a difference as we move forward for open enrollment. One of the things in looking at it, we as an organization, HCA, are supporting option 1 because it is the least change in outflow of members' money, but it does not change the benefits that come. The other 2 options, we felt that they are a very high increase. And even moving to the state board, the state policy, I have talked to too many people across the state, teachers, who are very envious of what we have. And they say they don't get the same supports. The clinics would be gone. The pharmacies would be gone, and the draw that you have for those that we can't conference for, your part-time and your classified, those benefits would be gone for them. And we care about them. We can't, teachers in the classroom cannot do their job without them. We need them to have that access. We need them to be just as healthy. So we support option one. We hope that you will look at that. You may have heard from some teachers this week. I hope you did. We encouraged them to reach out to you with their opinions, which may not be what I'm saying, and that's okay. They all have their own voice. So I just put that out there for you. Thank you.
Okay, I'll leave it to you.
Thank you to our delegates. Okay, we have quite a bit on our work session agenda today. We'll start with presentation with Blake Freeman. Family Life Curriculum.
All right, good afternoon, Chairwoman Robinson, Superintendent Robertson, and members of the board. I'm here to talk to you about Family Life Curriculum Update. As we always do, we start with our Opportunity 2030 commitments, and you're familiar with those, and everything that we do in the Teaching and Learning Office is always focused on that. The focus for this information to you, if you're wondering why is it that we're up here talking about this, is number one, I want to make you aware of the Tennessee Wellness Standards in 6th through 12th grade. Also, having a public opportunity to share is in compliance with TCA, and you can see the reference number right there. I've also provided for you at your stations a printout of that entire law so you can see that. But it is required that we inform the public by September of each year. Last year we did do this in a smaller forum, and then this year we brought it to the work session. I want to let you know about the current practices where this occurs, and then what's the communication that happens. So in short, instead of providing a lot of slides about that entire law, I've tried to sum up what is family life instruction. And so it's a part of the standards in wellness and in PE in grades 6 through 12, mostly taught in wellness in 9th through 12th grade, and in PE in 6th through 8th grade. The standards are developed by the Tennessee Department of Education. And then in 2021, the legislature passed a law that even specified what is to be taught. The main themes of that law include promoting sexual risk avoidance through abstinence, teaching the positive results of avoiding sexual activity, developing healthy relationships, and encouraging communication with parents, guardians, and other trusted adults. And so that's, like I said, the main themes of that entire law that I've provided for you front and back. As far as curriculum goes, the board did adopt curriculum in 2018 by the company called Glencoe, both for middle school with a text entitled Teen Health, and in high school a text entitled Health. It was adopted in 2018 following the state of Tennessee adoption cycle, but was not purchased, so we did not purchase this textbook. This is not unusual for some of our courses to not purchase the adoption. And it was selected from the Tennessee Department of Education approved list. So how does this instruction occur, and how do we train teachers? So middle schools and high schools in PE and in wellness are instructed to teach the standards as found in those wellness standards. And you can go online to see the link to the standards, but there's a link in this presentation as well. Any resources that a teacher use has to adhere to the state standards and has to be in accordance to this Tennessee Code annotated. There's also optional support that's been in our community for quite a long time called On Point. And so On Point is a nonprofit organization that equips students with wisdom, confidence, and support that they need to make healthy decisions. This has been a historical program that has been with Hamilton County Schools. I will say, though, that when this law was passed, Dr. Jamie Paris, who is our secondary director of teaching and learning, he actually sat down with On Point, and we audited through their curriculum to make sure that their curriculum is in compliance with the law, because the law also says that if you use an outside agency, they have to adhere to the law as well. And so we do use them. In schools where they are used, there is a required opt-in. So they have to send information home to parents. Parents have to sign and allow for their child to opt in to this material. If the child does not bring the signature back, then they don't participate in that. They go to a different location while their peers are in that instruction. We also communicate, and so part of the law says that we have to communicate with parents at least 30 days before these standards are taught. And so we follow that. Actually, beginning this year, we actually mandated that these standards cannot be taught at all until at least after the 30th day of school, and that's assuming that the teacher had given it out on the first day of school. Parents do have the opportunity to opt out in writing. That's what the law says, electronically or in written communication. And once again, their child will be placed in a different location while that class is happening. This is an example of the parent letter, but you also have a copy of the form letter that we created. So our offices created the letter, and it's given to our principals, assistant principals, as well as the PE and wellness teachers for them to make a copy of and send home to their parents. And the letter also has a QR code for the family to be able to scan and see the standards as well. So to wrap up, our next steps to continue compliance, we continue to train our wellness teachers and our PE teachers and our district-wide professional development on these standards. We also train them on Tennessee Code annotated pertaining to these standards. We will continue to engage On Point as an optional resource for our middle and high schools. We will continue to inform principals and assistant principals of the requirements for family life standards, and we will continue with the parent communication as per the law. So with that being said, I'll open it up if there are any specific questions.
Mr. Smith?
Blake, who will actually be teaching this?
So it's written into the PE teachers in 6th through 8th grade and in high school wellness teachers in their standards. Yep. So when they develop their lessons, they adhere to those standards.
Mrs. Robinson?
How often are these classes taught?
And so it depends. In 6th through 8th grade, typically a student's going to have at least a quarter, if not a semester, or the entire year in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We didn't dig down into all the standards, but the standards are built out just like an English standard is. 6th grade has, information, builds on 7th grade, built on 8th grade. A high school requirement for graduation is you have to have a wellness credit to be able to graduate. So a student only takes wellness one time within their high school career. There are some exceptions, like if you're, I think it's in ROTC for 4 years, that counts as a wellness credit. And so there are some exceptions where a student wouldn't take wellness, but for the most part, all students take wellness 1 year.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Mrs. Thurman?
Yes, that's one thing I was going to ask, is it's a credit course, so it is for just.
Wellness is a required course in
So
high school.
Just
Yeah.
one.
One credit,
One
one
credit,
wellness credit. But remember, this is just like a small portion of all the things
All
that
the
you do
things,
in wellness,
okay.
yeah.
Well, and a couple things, I was just kind of confused. Right here on one page, it says permission to opt in is sent home, and then over here it says parents have the opportunity to opt out, which
Yeah.
I don't know which
So
it is.
yeah, that's a great question. So opt-in, when we use On Point, so On Point's not our people, nonprofit, I'm sure you're familiar with
Yes.
them. When they come in, as a part of their requirement, students have to return an opt-in
Opt-in,
letter.
okay.
Yeah. But if a parent decided in those standards, they just don't want their child to have those standards or be a part of that lesson, the teacher's going to send a letter 30 days before to say, hey, and this week we're going to be covering these standards, and if the parent wants to opt out.
So they send letters home during the course of the study, if they're going to have
They
a
send it
certain
home, they're
lesson.
supposed to send it home 30 days before.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, so it's every lesson, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, so if they opt out of the whole course.
No,
but they
not the
can't-
whole course, just this
certain
segment.
section, okay.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
That's what I need, okay. Thank you.
All right. I've got a quick question. Can parents look at the curriculum somewhere?
Yes, they have access to the curriculum. We can place it on our website if you'd like to do that under our curriculum page. We actually just worked with communications to update that under our teaching and learning page to see everything that we do. But I can go and make sure that those standards have a link to there.
Yeah, I mean, that might be helpful. I'm actually asking as a parent of a sixth grader.
Sure.
So just
Yeah.
can't
I
seem to have these
understand.
conversations at home, so I've got to figure out what he knows. So, are there any other questions? Are we good? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to our next presentation. We've got Shannon Moody giving us an Opportunity 2030 update.
We're stepping in place of Shannon Moody to do this update. So this is real quick, just an update of kind of where we are at the end of the 22-23 school year. Some of this is not new information, but want to circle back to it. Of course, like everything, we're going to go back to our just cause, that all children thrive and experience a future without limits. One of the things that we've kind of transitioned to here recently is digging into our values a little bit more. So you're going to start seeing our values more often in presentations, just to remind you as a board what we believe in, and this really drives the work that we're doing. Ultimately, Portrait of a Graduate is where we're heading, and again, want to point out that this is not just about kids that are academically thriving, but we recognize that we need effective communicators as well. We need people that are solutions oriented, so it's more than just the academic side. And of course, our commitments, you guys know these by now, 5 commitments that really center us and focus our work across every department. So here to give you a quick update on the end of the 22-23 school year results, and just a reminder of what proficiency is and what growth is. Remember, we're kind of graded on 2 things, proficiency being on the left right there, just all outright achievement. Did a student meet or exceed grade level expectations is proficiency. That's a set amount. And then on the right, the value added or the growth is meaning, compared to like peers across the state, did we move a student forward? And I put this track that, Shannon has used numerous times in her presentations to talk about growth, is recognizing that kids start at different places on the track, and we want to make sure that they're making a full years of progress compared to their peers across the state. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Stewart to kind of give you a real high-level update of how we did last year.
All right, so this slide has information that you guys have all seen before that we produced as soon as we got our growth data, but just want to kind of draw your attention here again. So again, looking at achievement and growth. On the achievement side, you see that we're up in all 4 areas, and not only that we've made increases in all of those areas, but we've also we're also exceeding the state in all those areas. So that's really exciting. You guys are aware that in 3 out of 4 of those areas, we're now ahead of where we were pre-pandemic. Math is still working to bounce back. We hope to see some of that this year. We're still just under that in math. And then when you look at the growth, significant change from last year. Really feel like we can see that we've exceeded, that level, or level 5 in several areas, as well as significant growth there in science, with some more opportunities there in numeracy. I think the other thing I want to point out is anytime we talk about achievement and growth, growth needs to be at that 3, 4, or 5 in order to drive achievement. They really do go hand in hand, just as a reminder. You guys know how much we value looking at our student groups as well, looking how they did against the proficiency standards and how they did with growth. You can see on this slide that we've seen increases in all of our student groups, with exception of exceptional education that saw a slight decline on the achievement side. And then on the growth side, same thing. We see an area of opportunity there with our exceptional education students. I know that everyone on this board is familiar with how we restructured our ex-ed department last year and have provided additional resources, additional teachers. So this is certainly an area that we continue to be really committed to, and making sure that we are supporting our kids in the way that they need to be supported. So here's the actual commitment. You remember, all of our commitments are organized where we've got basically 3 key objectives, and then we have strategies and initiatives. And so I'm going to talk through some of those, but just a reminder here on Every Student Learns that we're committed to developing those readers and writers and thinkers, that we do believe that learning is based on a standard, and so we're making sure that our classrooms are aligned to state standards, and then really focusing on our early learners as we continue to double down on our commitment to literacy. Here are the targets for this school year. So you remember in our strategic plan, Opportunity 2030, we set out we set out targets for all 6 years. And this right here is the targets that we're looking at for this year. So if you take a look at this slide, you see the 4 metrics there on the left-hand side. So looking at achievement, looking at growth, looking at a reduction of kids that are in the bottom percentile, and then increasing kids showing levels of self-efficacy, the ability to believe that they can do the work. And then you can see how it's broken down by student groups. So we're looking at both the percentile, like the percent that have actually met those expectations, while also hoping to see percentile change. That percentile change, the way to think about that is how this group compares to their like groups around the state. So really intentional to look at our student groups as we continue to look at the whole. So here are key initiatives. The big things, I call them the big rocks for 2023. All of these I think you are familiar with, but just want to give you a little bit more information here. Our primary initiative here in Every Student Learns is that math curricular adoption. You guys have seen the data. You know, it's been 8 years since we've adopted a math curriculum. So we've got the curriculum in place, and we've launched that with a lot of professional learning for our teachers. In elementary, middle, and high, we kind of have some signature initiatives for each tier. So in the elementary tier, we're really focused on the Thriving Kindergarten toolkit. You guys have seen that, some adjustments we've made to kindergarten where we're bringing in the personalization while also trying to do some more micro assessing so that we can close gaps earlier in kindergarten. In middle schools, we're calling it Connected Middle Schools. We've talked a lot here about how important it is that kids connect to each other, kids connect to the educators and the school community, and so we've done a lot of work there, and that's a major rock for us this year in middle schools. And then the Freshman Success Academy, where we're trying to reinforce that freshman year and ensure that kids finish freshman year on track, which of course dramatically increases the likelihood that they graduate. When you go to the next thing, adjusting the K2 benchmarks, this is a conversation we've had as a board a lot about our benchmarking, when's the right time, what's the right dosage. So we've made some adjustments in that space and removing the benchmarking from kindergarten so that we can do these smaller assessments to close gaps. You guys are familiar with the work we're doing around RTI, that every single elementary school has an RTI teacher in there. We're pushing in on interventions there. We've increased staffing in our XED and in our ENL classrooms this year, and just decreasing those ratios and being able to support in that way. And then the last major rock there, you guys are familiar with our academic press and personalization framework, which is just really focusing schools on some of their primary needs. The way we're building on that this year is trying to provide high quality micro feedback. We're trying to provide much more targeted feedback than we have in the past, and really working on that from school leadership side. So I'll hand it over to Dr. Robertson for next steps.
So before we move on, definitely want to just take a moment to recognize the incredible work that Dr. Stewart did, that our teaching and learning department did last year, our community superintendents, principals, teachers. We've had a lot of fun recently, and some of you have been able to join us at going and giving out banners for growth, for other things, but just a moment to say thank you for all the great work that our staff has done this past year to make this happen. So transitioning a little bit.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Quick? Dr. Stewart, on the increased staffing for XED and ENL, are there any positions still open that haven't been filled?
There are. We're down in XED. I think we're down 13 is the number in XED. We've got 30 current candidates in our Grow Your Own pathway. They have to get through the praxis, but we are hopeful that we will be able to fill those by the mid-year. And then in our ENL department, I think we're down 4, I think is the last number I heard. Does that sound right, Dr. Bryant?
Maybe 4 or 6.
Okay.
And
So
those are, I've heard, are harder to find.
they're both.
Are there any in the Grow Your Own?
We don't have them in the Grow Your Own, but the state of Tennessee has actually done a lot around licensure with ENL, trying to add things on, like all the UT systems are adding it. So we see that pipeline developing. It's just we have to catch up. Our population is just growing so quickly that meeting their needs.
I think it's important to, again, additional staffing, meaning we're down 4, but overall we're up from where we were last year, and the ratios are lower. So,
Yeah.
I just had heard that area was down.
exceptional ed across the state is one that is difficult, and I know that there's some conversations at the state superintendent conference that I was at last weekend around possible help with licensure. Tennessee actually has some pretty tight licensure requirements that in some areas inhibit us from attracting, really talented people. So I'm going to transition a little bit here, and some of the board members that weren't here in 2017, there's a little bit of a refresher for I almost said older board members, but more experienced board members and the newer board members. But in 2017, the legislature passed a law requiring every school to get a letter grade. And in 2017, there was a model that was set up to calculate these letter grades. And you've got two documents. You've got this presentation, but I also gave you a front and back that has this information on it. This was the model that was adopted then, and it has not been run. We've actually never given letter grades in the state of Tennessee, and for multiple reasons. Early on, it was a year of testing issues. 2019, we could have given grades, decided not to. Obviously, COVID hit the next year. We could have given letter grades the past 2 years and decided not to. But this year, the state is moving forward very aggressively, giving letter grades. And so I'm putting this in front of you, number one, so that you know what in 2017 we were told would be the model. And right now, that model seems to be changing. We have not seen one. But we know that there was a listening session here in Chattanooga around it. There were several other across the state. But this model seems to be changing. What I want to put in front of you, so that if you get asked about this, or if you talk to any of our legislators, we had the opportunity.
I totally got it now. Thank you.
Yeah, that was easy to understand.
It just looked like a whole bunch of kids.
I know. So stick with me for a second, but I want you to know that we did have the opportunity to meet with Senator Watson, Senator Gardenhire, to make sure that they knew about our concerns. But there's a conversation that achievement is going to be weighted much heavier than growth, and want to make sure you understand what that means, right? And so there's this misperception out here that high achieving schools cannot have high growth scores, right? And so what this scatter plot shows is that if you look to the far right, the furthest dot to your right is the highest achieving school district in the state that actually has a high growth score, right? And you see the scatter plot that it's pretty consistent. There's no slant to it, which means that there is no correlation between growth and achievement. You can have a low achieving school that gets high growth or low growth, right? And you see that across this scatter plot. Same thing with growth and poverty here on the top, right? That there's this idea that if you're in a low poverty school that it's harder to get high growth scores. It's actually not the case. You see it, it's a very clean, consistent scatter plot there. Where there is a correlation is between achievement and poverty, right? And so you see here on the far left of that bottom chart are very low poverty schools, meaning upper middle class, higher income schools. And you can see they're higher achieving across the state. And then when you go down to the right, those are our schools that have high percentages of low income students, and there's a direct correlation between that and achievement. The point of showing you this is that we believe, and I put this up here, I'll skip it, but going back to 2008, these same trends are there. This is not new data. It hasn't changed over the years in Tennessee, right? That, again, growth and poverty, no correlation, but a very clear correlation between achievement and poverty. Reason I put this in front of you is because if we overweight achievement solely, what you're going to see is that low income schools are going to get the D's and the F's. Schools that have students of upper middle class are going to get the A's and the B's, right? So this is what it shows you on this. That to the right, if we did letter grades solely based on achievement, we can tell you exactly what's going to happen. Now, if we did it equally basing growth and achievement, then what you see in this graph is that actually everyone's got a chance, right? You see some high-income schools that get C's. You see some low-income schools that got an A. So we're really pushing the state in this conversation, and I bring it to you today because sometime soon we need to come up with a legislative agenda for this next session. And this is one that we strongly believe needs to be on that agenda, that when we're looking at letter grades, and I want to be clear, we are not arguing against letter grades. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that if you go back to this model that was adopted in 2017, you see a very clear balance between achievement and growth, and that's what we expect to see from the state. So wanted to put that in front of you. Again, we're having conversations as we get further into that legislative agenda. I think the board should have conversations around including this on that agenda. Any questions about the letter grades or the entire presentation?
Mrs. Robinson?
Yes, I'd like to know what range A, B, and C are. I mean, I've seen 90 to 100. I've seen 93 to 100.
So it's essentially what you would imagine on like a 5-point scale. So a 3 would be kind of average, what you would expect. And then a 5 would be exceeding expectations. A 1 would be something like significantly below expectations.
So it's that way instead of when you say grade A through F, it truly is that, not numerical.
Right.
Okay. Did I understand you said that you were going to go for achievement to be over growth?
No, ma'am. The exact opposite.
Okay.
And really not even the opposite, but a balance.
Okay.
A balance between achievement and growth.
That with
yes,
that.
ma'am.
So I knew I misunderstood. Thank you.
Mrs. Black?
I know you and I had some conversations about this last week. I'm incredibly concerned just because measuring growth doesn't mean we don't also measure achievement. We measure both right now. And we weight both, and it gives all students from all backgrounds the opportunity, because you don't get to achievement without having growth too. But from what I understand, in organizational management, you don't achieve what you don't measure, right? And if we stop measuring growth, there could be an adverse effect where students who were growing and not necessarily achieving high scores and weren't very high on achievement, that they get stuck there because we're no longer measuring and weighting growth. Is that a valid concern?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Mrs. Thurman?
Okay, I mean, we have a standard. How are we going to measure ourselves? You know, I don't like measuring myself against myself. I want to measure myself against somebody else, even though I'm getting a little bit better at whatever it is. There has to be a standard that our kids are reaching for to meet. We just can't keep, you know, even, it looks like with this, we're not even, of course, you can have some growth, but still be, like I say, if you're making a 35 and then you make a 40, you're achieving. But if you make a 95 and then you make a 93, you're losing. So one of them could get like an A in an area, and the other one get a, you know, not an A, but actually they have an A, but they're not growing as much as the other because they don't have as far to grow. Those numbers are a little skewed to me. They always have been. That's why I'm not real crazy about TVAS scores. I mean, I think those are the kinds of things that maybe we should use in-house. But as far as the academic scores, to measure us against other counties, against other states, you have to have a standard. And I don't want to mask that by making people feel good, because if you're still failing, you don't need to feel real good about that. And I have a problem with that, you know, because that makes the people that are really working hard to meet that standard and can meet that standard, what are we telling them? That, you know, you're good for you, you go on and do whatever. But we should really be focusing more on our high-achieving students. Not everybody is going to be smart. I mean, everybody's going to usually fall right in the middle somewhere. But, I mean, grades really shouldn't be about feelings all the time. How they make you feel. Sometimes you need a kick in the rear end to say, you know, you're going to have to step it up. You know, you're not going to be okay right where you are, even though you're better than you were last year. It's okay. But, you know, I just have a big problem with that. I just don't think we're striving for excellence like we used to. It just really bothers me.
Yeah. So, and again, want to make sure that we're clear, and if you see this chart, like achievement is almost 50% for elementary. So we agree with you that the standard is important. I want to make sure that we're clear on growth, and that growth is measuring, not just measuring me against me from last year, but it's against me against kids like me across the state, right? And so there is that level of school effect of did the school that I go to really make a difference in me compared to other kids like me across the state. And I think that's where it's important to have that balance. So I do want to be clear. We're not saying like one or the other. We're saying that both need to be in there and that both are important when you're trying to put a letter grade. And to be clear, like a single letter grade to catch the nuances of how well a school is actually serving kids is not the best method, but that's where we are.
Mr. Perez?
So, a question behind what I'm going to say, but like, what is the state's intention with the grade is the question. When I moved here, I went to great schools and determined where I was going to live based on the grade of the schools at all three levels. I wasn't familiar with the area. I didn't know it sufficiently, and I knew that I wanted at least the option for my kids to go to great elementary schools, great middle schools, and great high schools. And so I picked an area to live that a completely, what did I know about the system, you know, but I needed to go find somewhere where I could find the information. So of course, I agree with you. As I've lived here, I love so many other schools and areas and things that I wasn't aware of, but I looked at a standard that somebody made up that I don't know the first thing about that standard, and I determined a decision that impacted my family's life for the last 12 years based on some website that I always trust the internet, folks. And so anyways, that's the concern I have, right? Is that, as you said, it doesn't tell the whole story, but to people on the outside who are going to pull all these things, they're going to read a story. So help me understand what the state desires out of that.
I'm going to speak from the playbook, not from my personal beliefs. On the front of this, those three boxes is the original intent in 2017. To be clear and transparent with the community, accurate reflection of school performance, and a mechanism to support school improvement.
All right, thank you very much. Let's hope that's what the goal is then.
Mrs. Robinson?
Well, in looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, in looking at the 6 percentages of the accountability model, what percent, I guess it kind of piggyback off what Rhonda is saying, what percentage do they have to go forward to the next level?
Yeah, so in this model, again, this 2017, the one with 6 is looking specifically at high schools, and so we can get for you the breakdowns of showing, what was considered a 5, a 4. I will say in achievement in this one, there were actually 2 pathways. There was an absolute achievement pathway and then an AMO, annual measurable objectives, that if a school hit that, meaning, there's a target for them to hit. If they hit that target, they could get 3 was meeting expectations. If they got a double AMO, it may be 4, but we'll get you the exact breakdown of how they measured that.
And if this is adopted, of course, we would have to do a terrific job of informing the students and the parents of what's going on.
Let's be clear, this is for schools, like, this is not for students' report cards, this is for, like, a grade per school.
Oh,
It's
I'm
like
sorry.
adding a grade, like
Yeah.
A, B, C, D, F,
Yeah.
to, okay,
Okay,
to make
thanks-
sure that's
thank you
clear.
for that
I could hear the
clarification.
confusion happening, so.
Yeah, sorry,
yeah.
missed that one.
Mrs. Black?
And this isn't really a question, it's just a statement. I have a lot of concerns around this because a lot of our communities are already sorted based on income and poverty. And I don't think the general fabric of society benefits from that. And developing a rating system that heavily weighs a factor that is very heavily influenced by income is not going to help us build economically diverse communities, economically diverse schools, and all of the research tells us that all children from every economic level thrive in schools that are economically diverse. And this system is going to, if it weights achievement so heavily, is going to continue to sort our society into communities based on income. And I don't think that's what's best for kids. That is just a general concern. It's not a question.
Okay, Mrs. Thurman.
Yeah, I guess I have a problem with this. A black friend of mine calls this the bigotry of low expectations. And the bigotry of low expectations that we assume because you don't have a lot of money that you can't learn. That's always bothered me because in schools, I'll take Soddy Daisy for instance. We have some people at Soddy Daisy who are very, very poor. We have some people in Soddy Daisy who are very, very wealthy. We have some that live up on lake in $1 million homes. We have some that live up on the brow of the mountain in $1 million homes. And we have some that just barely get by. And you know what? In the school, we expect them all to do the same. We expect them all to learn the same. We don't ask for the parents' W-2 forms before we give them a grade. And by telling some students, you start telling them early on that you can't do it because you're poor. That is it's just bigotry. It's just wrong to do that to students. Why don't we tell them all they can achieve? Give them something to shoot for. Give them something to want to get out and work and say, honey, that's okay. You're poor. You can't learn. So we're going to just let you go right on by and that's okay. We're going to have to stop doing that because every school has some really, really wealthy people and some have some really, really poor people. But we don't judge them differently at school. Why do we do that to children? Why do we tell children, you start browbeating them from the very beginning and tell them they can't do something? That is just wrong. Because like I have said before, people have been able to learn. Our founding fathers learned to read, they learned to do math and all, without a computer, without anything. Those kids can learn. And for us to continue to try to make people feel better, sometimes they might need to be a little uncomfortable to strive and to play harder. It's just the same thing in athletics. You know, it's that's the reason I like athletics, because it really pushes people to the max. Not everybody is going to be a great quarterback. Not everybody is going to be able to shoot three-pointers, but there are going to be some that can. And they're going to be, you know, that's just the way it is in life. Not everybody can do everything well, but everybody can push and push and push to do as good as they possibly can. I just don't like this whole conversation about, we keep balkanizing these students. Why does everybody not want to strive and be the best that they can be? I just don't understand it.
Yeah. So I think it's important for us to consider historical context here. And in 2008, I mean, you see the trend there that poverty impacts achievement, and you see it again last year that the same trend is there, right? We're having this conversation as adults and as a member of a board. We're not going to a school saying like, hey, here, you're a school that's
we do it all the time, Justin. You know this.
No,
we tell some of these kids, well, these are low-performing schools.
No, that's exactly
so we
what
really
the
don't expect them to do a whole lot better. That
do.
is wrong.
But that's what the state's trying to do. But I just
But
want to
it's
be clear, because I think that argument, like when we talk about lowering expectations, we've actually done the exact opposite, and that's why we're saying
Well,
achievement.
you can say you're low-performing schools, but you can get up here where this other school is if you work hard enough. We're not going to say you're low-performing schools, so we really don't expect you to do any better.
Yeah.
That's
so
wrong.
That's why we're saying that achievement is important and should be balanced with growth, right? The standard is there, and we want to continue to push kids there. But, you know, I've said all along that achievement doesn't always measure school effect, right? And that if you're seeing data like this consistently, like I'll pull every year, and it's going to be this same thing. We've got to get comfortable having this uncomfortable conversation. There's something there. Something there. We can choose to deny it or not, but there's something there. And what we're actually trying to do is not lower expectations. What we're trying to do is say something ain't working, hasn't been working, and it's not the kid's fault, and it's not the family's fault. And we do have one-offs of kids that succeed in this. That doesn't mean that the system isn't still broken because one kid made it out of the system, right? And so I know it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for us too, but the reality is the data's been there year after year after year, and we need to have a balance of both achievement and growth.
Mrs. Jones.
So I think this conversation is not just an educational conversation, right? We know that. And if we don't know that, then we clearly missed the mark. This conversation is about upward mobility and economic mobility in our community. That is not just, honestly, I personally feel like it's not necessarily our problem. We inherited because the children that live in the communities that other people govern at various levels are the children that we teach. They don't want to live in certain environments or neighborhoods and situations, just as we don't want them to live in certain neighborhoods or situations. And I would love for all neighborhoods to be thriving, economically mobile neighborhoods. But the reality is there are systems in place that have been created for generations upon generations, and we've read about this in our educational journeys, that have created this. So that's just the reality. And so I will say, Rhonda, I agree with you. You do have to have a standard and you do have to have an expectation. I will say, coming as a product of a neighborhood that was somewhat thriving with working and middle class people that is now very deep in lack of upward mobility, everybody doesn't make it out. Doesn't mean that they all didn't have the same aspiration. Just when life is lifing, people choose based on personal choice to do whatever and make certain situations. But I also will say, living and still growing up and still living and working with children in the schools that have been deemed by the state definition of underperforming or low performing, that the children in those buildings never define themselves as underperforming or low performing. Their teachers don't define them as underperforming or low performing. And their community darn sure does not define them as underperforming or low performing. Because we know what they can do. We know what they have done, and we know what generations before them have done. And I stood in Tyner last Friday and said to them, like, I kept saying, y'all not excited enough for me because everybody out here in the public feels like you shouldn't have this 5 that you've had for 5 years, because nobody talks about the fact that children that are supposed to be underperforming or low performing are making TVAS growth scores of 5 and proficiencies of 5 consistently year after year after year. Nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about that. And even when the schools that were underperforming or low performing come out of that title, nobody celebrates that. But the schools that do it all the time and it's the norm, you hear about them all the time. Is that our fault? Probably. We own some of that. Is it our fault as board members? Probably. We own some of that. Is that our fault as a community? Probably. We own some of that. And is that our fault as our friends back there with the media? Yeah, they own a lot of it because people look at them and listen to them. But what I don't feel like in my soul is that any child within the 44,000 or 45,000 plus students that we serve wake up every day feeling like somebody's telling them they can't be. From their home or their village to us. Nobody's telling them that intentionally. And if they are hearing that in some space, there's some other adult in their lives telling them opposite. So I just want to clarify that I don't, in the 9 years, this month, 9 years of being here on this board. I don't believe I've ever heard any board, and this now my probably my 4th, 5th board I've been on, because people change and leave, and I keep staying like. But anyway, people change and leave, and I don't recall you, because you've been here with me the whole time, anybody up here ever saying these kids can't do this. So I don't even want you to stand there and own that, because we don't believe that. And we have to get people out there, the people on the screens that's listening, to change the narrative. The man that's videoing, the person that's writing the article, to change the narrative, because we're telling the right narrative. People just aren't telling it in the community. And so I have to say that. Now, I don't agree with this for a lot of other reasons. I ain't agree with it in 2017 for a lot of other reasons. But what I want every child in Hamilton County to know from me is that I don't believe that they are anything more than able to be as successful as they desire to be. And that's all we can ask of them. Not what we want them to be or what the state wants them to be, but what they desire to be. So I had to just say that, because that's really bothering me. Like we setting a standard. We don't set that. I don't believe anybody up here has set that standard. I know we do a lot of things up here. We do. But I don't think we've ever set that standard. And I don't want that to go out like that.
Thank you. Mr. Groen.
Just a comment on school letter grades. I was teaching in Colorado at the time, and I was teaching at Adams City High School, where we had 1,400 students. We had 3 different Hispanic populations, those that have been there for 300 or 400 years, those who had been there 2, 3, 4 years, and those who had just come or were illegal. And I had some of those kids on my traveling chess team. I was teaching science at the time, and one of the chemistry teachers in my high school applied for and got a job in a different school district. And he said, "Isn't it amazing? In one fell swoop, I went to a teacher who taught chemistry, and my rating was D, because that's what my school was. And all of a sudden, magically, I'm now an A chemistry teacher." So I don't like this whole idea of school letter grades, period. And I don't think I'll ever support it. So I'm just saying, we got a lot of benchmarks we can use and TCAPs. I'm not a fan of TAVAS for some of the reasons that others may have voiced. You know, we have fewer students now. I mean, the population of Hamilton County in the last 26 years has increased like over 50%. We have fewer students now than we did 26 years ago. Now, let me preface that by saying that Chattanooga has a decades-long history of being the highest percentage per capita of students who do not attend public schools. I mean, it's somewhere around 22 to 24% of all K-12 students don't go to public schools. And I have a black family that moved into my neighborhood over in Eastridge. And I know he works 2 jobs. He works a full-time job and a part-time job. And she works a part-time job during the day just so they can pay the tuition for their 3 kids to go to Belvoir Christian Academy, because they don't want them attending 2 public schools in my district. So people are voting with their money and their feet, even though they're paying federal, county property taxes and sales taxes to support our school system. Whatever our grading practices are, or our grading policies are, what we've been doing pretty much for the last 26 years or 25 since we've been unified is not working. Period. It just isn't working. You can tout all these, you know, Nolan Elementary School got a 3 on TVAS. because they went from like 76% math and reading at third grade level to like 44.5%. But they got a 3 because they had negative growth. You know, that I don't get that. So I and some of our local elected officials think that TVOS is just a feel-good, pat yourself on the back achievement that we can use as propaganda to say what a good job we've done. But still, you know, we've got schools. We've got 9 or 10 schools that less than 20% of the third graders can read and do math at grade level. I don't care what our district average is. We need to look at individual schools. And we need to have certain concrete standards that we're going to judge all these students by. And we're in the drive to promote equity. We need to be equitable to all of our students and not just some in certain schools that, whether we're saying this publicly or not, we are holding them to a different standard than students in other schools in the county. So we need to have some sort of conversations on grading practices, grading policy. We may even need to broach year-round schooling again. You know, I've studied that. Historically, we have a fallback during the summer, significant fallback, especially at K through 5 schools. We wouldn't have that if we had year-round schooling. We wouldn't have that fallback. So we need to really, as this board, as we move forward, at least over the next 3 years, is have some serious conversations on what is our education system going to look like. Or we're going to continue to bleed students, to bleed talent into private schools in all sorts of areas. So just to open up, you know, general conversation amongst the board members over the next 12 months about, you know, we look at this, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to continue down the same road, expecting different results and doing the same thing? Or are we going to continue just the way we are and to continue the struggle just the way we are with very incremental improvement? Thank you.
Okay, and I have a final comment from Mr. Perez.
Just a comment there before people misunderstand. Nolan Elementary is a phenomenal school that just got blue ribbon status, and so I don't want to. No, I know, that's why I just don't want a misunderstanding that it just fell down tremendous. It's an excellent school, and we're very proud of it. So, yeah, no, I know you didn't mean that, but I know you're pointing to the standard that's not a fair standard. But yeah, so I just don't want the public to think what.
Yeah, I just saw like a bunch of people list their houses on Signal, so they're probably moving to Red Bank though, so good news. Okay, thank you for the lively discussion and thank you for the presentation. I do wonder if we should have had Shannon provide it, just, you know, because that was 30 minutes ago. So, but you did a good job. Okay, I'm actually gonna hand over the next presentation to Mr. Connor and Mrs. Black, and we have the Red Bank Commission. Sounds like the Red Bank Commission. I'll let you introduce everyone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So yes, I did add an item to our agenda, and thank you, Ms. Black, for seconding it.
Seconded it.
To get that added. So we are going to be recognizing the delegation coming from the Red Bank Commission. The Red Bank Commissioners voted 2 of their members to be in charge of drafting a resolution that they would present to this board in the mindset of the proposal that came from the working group. In my memo, I wrote this, and I want to make sure that I get it exactly the same. So we're recognizing our fellow elected officials in this manner, allowing us to remind all citizens of Hamilton County that no action or vote will be taken on any facilities proposal until all areas of Hamilton County have had their chance to make their voices and their thoughts on the proposal heard. As we've seen from our friends at Alpine Crest tonight and previously, there will be a meeting in every area of Hamilton County, so please check the Hamilton County Department of Education website to find a meeting near you to make sure that your voice is heard. But then I do want to turn it over to Vice Mayor Stephanie Dalton, Commissioner Jamie Fairbanks Harvey, and they are going to present the Red Bank resolution to the board.
And as they're making their way, I did want to just recognize that Commissioner Sharp is here with us tonight. So thank you for being here, Commissioner Sharp. And thank you, ladies. We appreciate you taking your time to be here, too.
Thank you. First, we want to thank Mr. Connor and Ms. Black for working with your colleagues to add us to the agenda for this evening. Very appreciative of that, and for all the rest of you allowing us to be here to present this resolution to you. We would like to read it aloud, just for the public record. It should only take a couple of minutes, and we're going to take turns, and if you have any questions afterward, we would be very happy to try to help you with that. And just for clarification, I'm Stephanie Dalton, Vice Mayor of Red Bank.
Jamie Fairbanks Harvey, one of the commissioners. And I do have copies, hard copies, if you need one.
There are copies on the agenda as well. So the public can click on the website for the agenda and get a copy of the resolution.
Thank you.
And this resolution was voted on by our board this past Tuesday evening, September the 19th, and passed unanimously 5-0. So resolution number 23-1618, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Red Bank, Tennessee, to inform the Hamilton County School Board and the Hamilton County Commission of Red Bank's position on the recently announced School Facilities Working Group recommendations.
Whereas the City Commission of Red Bank recently created, the City Commission recently created a committee to present and coordinate Red Bank's position and response to the recently announced School Facilities Working Group recommendations, which include, among other provisions, a plan to close Alpine Crest Elementary and consolidate it with other elementary schools outside the City of Red Bank. And
whereas Alpine Crest Elementary School is the only Hamilton County elementary school within the City of Red Bank. And
whereas the City of Red Bank passed resolution number 23-1614, designating Vice Mayor Dalton and Commissioner Fairbanks Harvey as co-chairs of the recently created committee to present and coordinate Red Bank's position and response to the recently announced School Facilities Working Group recommendation to the Hamilton County School Board and the Hamilton County Commission. And
whereas Red Bank recognizes Alpine Crest Elementary School as an optimal learning environment for Red Bank students, achieving both Level 5 and Reward School status, as well as a designated Volkswagen E-Lab, Forest Kindergarten, ENL, Certified Pollinator Garden, Arboretum, and robust environmental science school site that is highly regarded by generations of alumni and currently attending families in the Red Bank community. And
whereas Red Bank further celebrates the excellence of Rivermont's elementary school, which is a zone school for some Red Bank families, by acknowledging its designation as a STEM school by the Tennessee Department of Education and Tennessee STEM Innovation Network. And
whereas Red Bank advocates for full funding and investment in our children's public education countywide. And
whereas Red Bank seeks to retain an elementary school within the city limits of Red Bank and within Hamilton County District 6 to ensure safe and adequate access for our children to quality public education at all grade levels, to maintain representation by District 6 elected officials and sustain and enhance our vitality as Red Bank, a good city.
And whereas Red Bank identifies the former White Oak Elementary School site, also known as the Dawn School, as a potential location for a new elementary school, which could consolidate other nearby and aging facilities into a new facility and retain an elementary school within the city limits of Red Bank. And
whereas conversely, this commission does not endorse the prospectively planned transport of Red Bank elementary students out of our city to the, quote, Heart of Hickson, as stated in the School Facilities Working Group recommendations, August 2023. And
whereas Red Bank emphasizes the importance of retaining the continuous feeder pattern for all elementary school students residing within Red Bank city limits, achieved by attending elementary schools where the entire student body matriculates together as a cohort into Red Bank Middle School and Red Bank High School, maintaining important social bonds, improving student experience, and enhancing educational outcomes. And
whereas Red Bank confirms Vice Mayor Stephanie Dalton and Commissioner Jamie Fairbanks Harvey as designated commission co-champions for ongoing engagement with you, Hamilton County Schools, regarding the school facilities working group recommendations.
now therefore be it resolved by the City Commission of the City of Red Bank, Tennessee, that this commission desires to retain an elementary school within Red Bank city limits to ensure safe and adequate access of quality education for the children of Red Bank, to maintain representation by District 6 elected officials, and to sustain and enhance our vitality as a city. Should the closure of Alpine Crest Elementary School be deemed unavoidable, this commission seeks to preserve the use of the Alpine Crest Elementary School site for use by the City of Red Bank for the public's benefit indefinitely. Resolved this 19th day of September 2023. And I have a signed copy by our mayor and our city recorder. I don't know who I need to miss for.
Thank you both. I think we'll open up the floor for comments from board members. Mr. Connor, would you like to start?
If not, I just wanted to say thank you. I think that I appreciate the time and effort that your elected body put into stating the things that need to be there. And I think that I just really respect the fact that in here it speaks to wishes, but it speaks to compromise, and it speaks to the way that good governance happens and getting the best situations out of proposals and plans. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Keene?
Yes, I also appreciate you throwing out a alternate solution if there was a closure, and I would also wonder if the site for the old Red Bank Middle and previously before that the old Red Bank High School might not be an option. But a question I would ask your commission is, if for some reason Alpine Crest was to be left open, you know, there's a lot that has to be done there. So what would the Red Bank Commission be willing to do financially to help support that? That's my question. So.
I can't speak for our board. We haven't discussed this together, but I have spoken with our city staff and our city manager, and we agree that there is definitely an opportunity to talk about us allocating funding for that.
Okay. Dr. Robert, or I'm sorry, Mrs. Thurman, and then I'd love to turn over to Dr. Robertson after that.
Well, I went to Alpine Crest for 3 years. And I got to do the speech. It's the 6th grade reunion. I meant the 6th grade graduation. I thought it was because I was smart, and I found out it was because my voice carried. They told me we graduated outside. So I was later told that. So that should surprise no one here. And I still remember my speech, by the way, that many years ago. But, so I love Alpine. I know all about Alpine. Great school there. So I'm with you on the biggest mistake that was ever made is allowing us to build Red Bank Elementary School outside the city limits of Red Bank. That should have been called Mountain Creek Elementary. It should have never been called Red Bank Elementary. That was allowed to happen, but it did. And a lot of people don't know that school's not in Red Bank.
That's right.
Matter of fact, it's quite a bit outside of the city limits of Red Bank. So I agree that Red Bank does need a school, and I like some of the options that have been here. The one for building the school in the old, it was high school. That's where I went to high school. The old Red Bank High School used to be, and also the possibility of the White Oak school. Maybe that could maybe bring in some more people from North Chattanooga, where so many people are moving in. You know, I mean, all those are options. But so far we haven't even discussed that. As you well know, our board has really never discussed this. Just came from the commission. Yeah. This is not from us.
That's right.
But that was just kind of put out there, and I appreciate some of the input. It gives us a little bit more food for thought about what we can think about doing. But I appreciate it. Good to see you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I was in the first graduating class of Alpine Crest. It was 6 years back in those days, and grew up right there in Red Bank Middle, Red Bank High School. I'm Red Bank through and through. I really appreciate your willingness to give us another thought, another idea that Ms. Thurman just mentioned. Well, wouldn't it be great if we could have little Alpine Crest schools all over Hampton County? Wouldn't that be wonderful? It would. But I think everybody knows that that's just not possible. This is not a new conversation. You know, we've been talking about this for 25 years. Mayor Coppinger and the mayor before him had working groups that recommended that, and then we spent over $500,000 a few years ago, and that group recommended this, and now this most recent group recommended this, and so everybody agrees we got to close some schools, combine some schools. Don't close mine, you know. So I really appreciate you guys thinking this through and saying, "No, let's look at this. Look, sounds great to me." And you got that property over on Dayton Boulevard where they used to have them brick people up on the building. I used to tell my kids that was me and their mama on the building. So thank y'all for thinking this through. And like Rhonda said, we're just starting this process, and we need to hear from everybody across the community. There's no telling what kind of great ideas might surface. But thank y'all for doing this.
Mrs. Robinson?
Hi. I do appreciate your passion, your love for your school, your community, but it's early on, and I hope you'll be at all the neighborhood for your discussions, for the input, and it's only then will hopefully the best decision to be made as far as feasibility is concerned. And all the wonderful programs that you have there, it would be nice if all the schools had them. Thank you.
Mr. Connor?
That was a perfect segue for me to give a good note. Because of the Red Bank Commission meeting that is on the 3rd of October, the date that was suggested in the facilities meeting has been swapped with the Gateway facilities discussion. So the meeting that is talking about these 4 schools in consolidation is going to be on Wednesday the 4th. Yes, Wednesday the 4th.
Yeah, I'm on the 3rd.
Yes, and I'll be at yours, but yes. So just wanted to make sure that that's on the record for the public to be at that meeting, which I believe we have decided is now held at Red Bank Middle, and that will be at 6 p.m. on the 4th, Wednesday the 4th.
Good. I'd love to hear Dr. Robertson's thoughts. You know, it's not every day that we have a resolution brought to us by our neighboring city or, you know, someone within our county, and so I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's been proposed.
Yeah, so number one, Mr. Smith, got 2 Red Bank Hall of Famers actually here, Ms. Thurman and Mr. Smith, and those brick people are actually over at the new high school.
Yeah,
the new high school.
Yes, and I did everything I could to save those brick people when we tore that school down.
Yeah.
We had a resolution for that.
That was like my first experience with Red Bank I had to figure out who the brick people were. So no, I mean, I think these are good ideas. I mean, what I've said all along about this recommendation with the City of Red Bank is there's a lot of opportunity for us to partner on some things that could be pretty special. I wouldn't rule out any of those sites. I mean, I've always thought that Red Bank Middle property is a beautiful property, and we had actually spoken about both of these 2 properties pretty quickly after this went out. Maybe one of those heated conversations, I'm not sure. But, you know, I think that it's worthwhile, and really what we want out of this input period is for this to come out. Said all along, not perfect. These recommendations aren't perfect. Expect them to change, and I think these are ideas that the board should consider.
That's great. Great. Well, thank you so much, Commissioner and Vice Mayor. Greatly appreciate not only just your entire group's work on this, but really, as everyone else has said, thinking out of the box and being a partner with us on what's best for our schools and our kids. So thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so normally we would roll into an agenda discussion, but since we're already up against 6 o'clock. Oh, I'm sorry, we do? Okay, is that a presentation or okay, great. Okay, so you have a handout on it's the student well-being survey. I did see Dr. Russell, though, they're here. Is there anything that you want to let us know about this survey?
So majority of the information is on the page for you all. But I do just want to say that we know that building a sense of belonging in our schools is really important for our kids, and also we'll just say for our entire school community. So this gives us an opportunity to hear from our kids. Again, just kind of keep in mind our goal is to make sure that our students have connections to their peers, to adults, as well as their school community, and this survey gives us that opportunity. So any questions or?
I have one, the K through 2, it sounds like, on all the others, as I read the questions, it sounds like those are students answering those. But the K through 2, that's the teacher that's going to answer all those?
You're absolutely correct.
So they're going to fill those in for every one of their students?
Yes, for our K-2 students, yes, homeroom teachers will do that. I do also want to emphasize that this is a parent opt-in survey, so this will be opt-in this school year.
Well, Mrs. Black?
Is this data set still managed by a third party? I know we had this discussion last year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's managed by our district as well. So
Okay.
know that it's confidential, so you only have selected amount of individuals that have access to the data. So again, you know, we manage it, they send us data results, but we also manage it in-house.
Do they own it? Like, once we've submitted it to them, do they own it to use or sell?
We own the data to use. They're not taking this data and using it any type of way for any reason.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Thurman?
Yes, I just want to, these questions out where parents can read it.
Yes.
Okay, so it is an opt-in. I
So-
just want all parents to know that this is an opt-in. I personally don't like a lot of these questions. I don't know why we need to know some of these things. They're very subjective. I just don't know why we need to know really most of these things. So I want parents to take the time to read it and read some of the questions. I just don't see where they have a whole lot to do with academics, but maybe some people do, but I personally don't. But anyway, parents have the option to not let their students do it, and I just want them
It
to
is
know that.
opt-in. And quick correction, the website will be available on the 25th, which is Monday. So that's when we'll start the promotion, but we wanted you all to be aware that this information is coming.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Mrs. Robinson?
Okay, this is twice a year, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you see the improvement, and is there any adjustment in the classroom as a result of the testing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it is our goal to track trends, to look at the trends to see where growth is. If you can remember, one of the 2030 goals is for us to look at the increase of self-efficacy, and that's one of the areas that's being measured. So we will track trends and then make adjustments, definitely for students that need support in those areas, and then also to highlight students that are doing really good when it comes to some of the areas.
Without naming names, of course, can you give an example of what is improved?
So if we talk about self-management, I think that was one of the areas that was really high across the district for our students. So when we think about self-management, that's just the ability to be able to manage ourselves. So that's an area where we want to continue to help our students to grow. That is also a competency that shows, college prep. So if we start to think of students that we're preparing for college, we know that being able to manage yourself is a great skill to have when we start to talk about future success.
Well, I just wonder if the answers would be different on a Monday than a Friday, or a Wednesday, or a time of day. I don't know, I just, if it's helpful to the students, I'm all for it, but it's just new to me. Thank you.
Understandable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We will email you with additional questions. All right, we'll take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and start our voting session. So we'll come back at 6:10. Thank you.